Redline logbook here for Danmachi Hestia Familia Part 9. Where we left off, Bel and his Familia just dropped off Ween with the Xenos, and they asked Hestia, what is the dungeon? And her response was, the dungeon is the dungeon. At most, a couple days have passed, and the Hestia Familia are basically depressed and sad by the fact that Ween is gone, and they won't see her anytime soon. Everything just seems solemn and quiet. Bel barely eats all of his food. It's a very depressing moment in time, because even though she was with them for a short time, Ween is now a member of their family. Harahime is the second one most affected by this. She basically was the one who spent the second most amount of time with Ween, got really close with her. There's even a moment in time where she lies in Bel's bed and she's able to smell the scent of Ween because she slept with Bel with Hestia. But yeah, she's actively depressed as well. Lily, on the other hand, is more frustrated with Hestia. The reason for this is because anytime a mortal asks what is the dungeon, the gods always give the same response: the dungeon is the dungeon. And because of this, it's clear that the gods know what the dungeon actually is, but they won't tell anyone. It seems to be a rule that when you come down to Earth, you're not allowed to reveal that ultimate secret. That the mortals have to make it to the bottom of the dungeon to find out what it really is. That's just the rule for some reason. And because of this, Lily feels like she's being betrayed, in a sense, by the goddess, or by the gods in general. Like they're just being played with. As for Hestia, because she learned that Ganesha is also part of this conspiracy with the Xenos, she decides to go confront him and see what he thinks. When she goes to see him, his Familia is currently trying to tame some monsters. Ganesha is personally trying to work with a baby dragon, which tries to kill him. His Familia then tells him to please get out of the way, because he's going to get himself killed. Hestia then approaches Ganesha and informs him that Uranus has told her about the Xenos. And Ganesha then stops acting like Ganesha. He gets really serious and then tells his Familia him and Hestia are going to talk privately. They wander pretty far away, so this way they can't be heard by the enhanced hearings of the Adventurers, because most of his Familia doesn't actually know about the Xenos, and they have their conversation. Ganesha informs Hestia that he first learned about them when Uranus introduced him to a goblin in a red cap. The goblin then talked to him as a human being and explained that they wanted to be friends with humanity and wanted to join them. Hestia then asked, what does he think of this? And Ganesha's response was, he is the god of the people. If there is a being with the intelligence and will to hold its hand out for help, he will happily take it. Hestia's response to that was, wow, for the first time you actually seem cool, Ganesha. And then Ganesha went back to being Ganesha and said, of course I'm cool, I'm always cool, and he did one of his poses. I am Ganesha! So yeah, Hestia was glad to find that there was another god who thought the same way she did. But yes, there's a general malaise within the Familia, but things are about to get much, much worse. Since the moment Bel found Ween, another Familia has been after her because she's such a rare monster, and the fact that she's also a Xeno means she's very, very valuable. She'll go for high price. This other Familia is the Ikelos Familia, a group connected to Evilis, an organization that brought terror to Aurorio for over a decade. What Ikelos Familia does now, though, is they sell monsters, talking ones, on the black market. And they figured out that the Hestia Familia is connected to the Wyvern. And so this entire time they have been following them in Aurorio, in the dungeon and such. They were forced to retreat because of the Hermes Familia for a moment. But, for the most part, by following the Hestia Familia, they know the general location of where the Xenos live. The Xenos don't just live in one village, they have multiple throughout the dungeon. They do this to avoid detection, and also, when food supply begins to run short, they need to, move locations. So they're a nomadic tribe, basically. They travel in small groups to avoid detection, because they can't all travel together, but they do use communication orbs that Fels gave them, so this way they can always stay in contact with each other while they're traveling in their small groups. Ween, unfortunately, was in the last group to be moved. In her group, she had Renine, an Arachna, Fear, a Harpy, AD, a War Shadow, 4, a Formor, a Goatman, and finally, Cliff the Griffin. Now, every Xeno here is a level 2, and so that means the two main bodyguards was 4, a level 5, and the leader of the group, Rhea, a level 4, and also a follower of Gross. As such, she is one of the human haters, and so when Ween was complaining that she missed the Hestia Familia, and she missed the fact that they always gave her hugs when she was scared or nervous, Rhea basically told Ween to forget about the humans, that they don't matter, that all humans are evil trash. And they're kind of having this conversation that is until Ween almost topples over because of the intense pain she's feeling from her ears. Because she's a dragon, she has enhanced hearing, and the one she's hearing uses sound as a weapon. And what Ween hears is a woman begging for help, begging to be saved, and it's clear to Ween that this is a fellow Xeno, one that the village has never met before. She informs the rest of the group, and their decision is to, of course, go save a comrade of theirs. Renee informs Gross that they're going to take a detour to save their comrade. Of course, Gross is against this, because this is clearly a trap of some kind, but they ignore Gross and go anyway. That's when they find a harpy chained to a tree with killer hornets eating her alive. They quickly kill the hornet, but the damage is already done. This harpy, she is ripped apart. They're going to cut her down to see if they can save her, but before that can happen, that's when Ikilos Familia appears, captained by Dix Pernick. Obviously, there are questions if they are the humans that have been hunting them this entire time, and Dix reveals, yeah, that was me, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Enraged by the fact they finally found their enemy, AD then attacks Dix head on. This does not end well for him, because Dix's right hand, Gran, cuts him in half. What's even more disturbing is that AD actually survives this, and Dix actually criticizes Gran for cutting him in half because they could have sold him, possibly, and then immediately crushes the War Shadow's head. With that, the battle begins, and the Xenos are just outclassed. The only two that have any chance of winning, of course, are Four and Rainey, who are able to put up a pretty good fight themselves, but everyone else gets completely crushed. Fear is just knocked out of the sky by an Amazon. Cliff is impaled in all 4 of his legs with spears and held down that way. 4, being a level 5, is actually doing the most work. He's really kicking the crap out of the Ikilos Familia. That isn't until Dix gets involved, and also a level 5, but much faster, is able to get behind him and stab him in the back. This causes Rainier to look away for a second, and Ground then just chops off a bunch of her legs. Ween, who is scared the entire time, hasn't even moved until she sees 4 hit the ground and is just bleeding to death. She runs over to help him, but then Dix knocks her out. When it's all said and done, Dix then orders them to kill all of the non-humanoid monsters, and so Cliff and 4 are just stabbed to death. Rainier continues to fight even as she's half crippled. That's when Dix decides she isn't worth the trouble and says go ahead and kill her. 3 of Dix's men then asked if they could have their way with her before killing her. Dix is, of course, grossed out, but at the same time, he doesn't really care, and he just says, whatever, do what you want. They go off to violate her, but she spews her venom on them, burning their skin, and she declares that she will not allow her body to be defiled in any way. So she stabs herself through the chest and crushes her own magic stone, ending her own life. And the last thing Dix does is he kills the harpy he had tied up, because she's already half dead because she was eaten alive. In total, 5 Xenos are dead and 2 are kidnapped, Fear and Ween. Shortly after Dix and his men are gone, Gross shows up and discovers what remains of his family. Enraged by this, he's able to take the anger of all of the Xenos and fuel it for revenge. He's able to usurp power from Leo and convince the majority of Xenos to join him in attacking the humans and going after their kidnapped brethren. Renina's venom was of course sprayed on 3 of Dix's men, and so they're able to follow the scent of the venom, which leads to Reveria. So there's a full-on attack of the Avengers of Reveria by the Xenos. The Avengers had no chance and were forced to run back to the surface, where they immediately informed the Guild that armed monsters were destroying Reveria. In the panic, the Guild then immediately sent out a quest for all Avengers to go out and take down the armed Avengers in Reveria. And then, immediately, while in the middle of this broadcast, reversed the order. They ordered an evacuation of the dungeon of all Avengers and for everyone to stand by at their homes waiting for instructions. Instead, the Ganesha Familia specifically were going to handle the subjugation of the monsters. As you can imagine, the entire Hestia Familia then started to freak out about this because they know exactly what's happening and they're wondering why it's happening. Every member except for Bell is at their home when they end up getting a letter. The letter is directly from the Guild. Basically the same instructions was released on the broadcast. Stay at your home. The Ganesha Familia will handle everything. If we require extra help, you will be called upon. But the Hestia Familia's letter was different from everyone else's. Around the border was the language of the gods. And it tells the Hestia Familia that Bell has been selected as part of the subjugation squad. You see, this is Uranus' test for Bell. There have been other mortals that discovered a Xeno and were kind to them, but when it came to risking their own reputation, they always turned their back on the Xenos and abandoned them. They weren't willing to sacrifice everything for a monster. Uranus has said before, the age is moving forward, and this new age needs a hero. And he wants to know if Bell is that hero. And so, in the expedition, the orders of the Ganesha Familia are to capture the monsters alive. During all the fighting, Bell is actually looking for Ween, but she's obviously not there. That's when Leo spots Bell, and the two of them are able to then run away so they can speak to one another. Leo informs Bell of the truth, and Bell says he wants to help. But then Leo cuts a line to the ground and saying, no, you cannot help. This is a matter for the monsters. This is a matter for the Xenos. A human cannot get involved. And if you cross this line, you basically are giving up everything as a human at that point. including your Familia. Bell hesitates, but he actually does start to move towards the line. That's when Ryu shows up and forces Leo to retreat. Ryu's there because Asvi and Aisha both asked her to join them in protecting Bell under Hermes' orders. Gross's group found the 3 men that were soaked in poison, basically tortured them for information, and were informed where the secret entrance was located near the wall. He then killed the 3 men, and then went off looking for the hideout. He roared, letting everyone know that he had found the entrance. That's when Leo and a group of Xenos joined Gross at the wall, while Ray led the other group that stayed behind to take on the Ganesha Familia. Obviously, they couldn't find the entrance because it was a hidden door, but then it opened up, and they went in, and they kept following the path that was kept opening for them, because only certain doors would open up. Obviously, this was a trap, but they were on their way towards their comrades, so they really didn't have a choice. Back with Bell and Ryu, Bell said he's going to follow that monster. He was specifically talking about Leo. She, of course, has no idea about the Xenos. She just thinks it's a wild monster connected to a group known as Evilis, and she doesn't want Bell getting involved in that group. And so she tries to stop him, but Bell straight up tells her, no, I'm going. I have to do this. And this is where Ryu finally acknowledges Bell as an adventurer. Up to this point, she just saw him as a close friend and someone that she should look out for, but this was the first time she acknowledged him as an adventurer, and so she let him go. Not before giving him a bag of potions, of course, to make sure he stays alive. Bell made it to the direction that Leo was going, but he came to a wall, like everyone else did. That's when he met up with Faust. Faust was there the whole time, he just happened to be invisible, but he finally revealed himself when he saw Bell's bag that was given to him glowing. He pulled out a eyeball magic item, and he realized it was responding to something, and so he moved in the direction of the response, and it opened up a door. Obviously, this was the secret entrance, and so they followed behind the Xenos. Along the way to one of the biggest entrances, the word Daedalus was written over it. It became clear that the creator of this labyrinth was the great artisan Daedalus from 1,000 years ago. The Xenos were the first to enter the room with all of the cages, with Fear and a bunch of others Xenos they had no idea even existed. Dix waited until all of them were freed, and then he revealed himself with all of his men. He did this because he wanted to make it harder for them to fight, now that they had to protect a bunch of injured friends. That's when Bell and Faust finally came into the room, and obviously Faust started to ask questions like, who are you? Belong to Daedalus, how did you get your hands on it? And Dix reveals the truth of who he is and everything about it. This labyrinth is called Noxus. It was designed by Daedalus, as the mage says, but it was not built by him. No, it was constructed by all of his descendants for 1,000 years, because Daedalus cursed his own bloodline to obsess over finishing Noxus. Dix, of course, is one of Daedalus' bloodline, and therefore has the right to do what he wishes with said Noxus. Of course, Gross doesn't give a shit about any of that. He only wants to get his comrades back, and he wants to kill Dix for all the suffering he's caused, so he charges in. Dix doesn't just want to fight fair. No, that's not how he plays. He decides to then set out a curse, which causes all the Xenos to go on a rampage and attack one another, not just his men. The only reason Bell and Faust weren't affected was because Faust's robe is made of a special material he designed to ward off magic and curses, and he made sure to put Bell behind him before the curse was activated. Faust then reveals to Bell that the way to stop a curse is to defeat the caster. If you knock him unconscious, it deactivates the curse. And so Bell goes to fight Dick. Dix then reveals that he's a level 5, and there's no way Bell can beat him, but then Faust tells Bell that curses are as powerful as they are because they come with a cost. You basically lose an entire level of power when you use it. As such, Dix is more of a level 4 at this point. And so the fight between Dix and Bell begins. Bell is now faster than Dix now that Dix is down to a level 4, but the issue is he's way more skilled in combat than Bell is. Every trick, every move, everything that Eyes taught Bell, he tries on Dix, but none of it gets through. He even tries to feint Dix, but then Dix feints his feint and then gets Bell, slashes him across the face. He can read everything Bell is doing. He just has way more combat experience. And the cut on Bell's face just starts to bleed uncontrollably, because Dix's spear is also cursed. No matter what magic you use on it or what potion, it will not heal and it will not clot. And while Dix is having fun beating the living shit out of Bell, he then explains why he does what he does. It's not for the money, it's not for Noxus, it's none of that. It's so he can free himself from his curse. Every moment of every second of his life, he hears Daedalus screaming in the back of his head behind his eyeball to finish Noxus, to finish the labyrinth, constantly. And this compelled him his entire life to work on the labyrinth endlessly, giving his entire being to it. That is, when he discovered the Xenos. When he started to attack them, they would cry and beg for mercy. He could torture them, and they would suffer, and he could delight in their suffering. This satisfaction he got was so overwhelming, it was even more powerful than the curse that was constantly beckoning at him at all moments. And so this gave him freedom from continuing on the labyrinth. And so his biggest obsession in life was to find the Xenos and torture each one of them that he could, so he can continuously feed that urge to free himself from this curse. He claimed that no alcohol or drug could compare. Bell argued back that that's not right in any way, shape, or form. They have feelings. They can laugh. They can love. They can shake your hand. They are people. And of course, Dix responded to that by just beating the living shit out of Bell. And he says, "You kill monsters too. In fact, I'll prove it." And he asked Bell to follow him. Bell is stumbling at this point because he just got the shit rocked. Dix leads Bell to where Ween is chained up. He grabs onto her stone in the center of her forehead. Bell realizes what's about to happen, charges forward to stop Dix, but it's too late. He rips it out, and Ween transforms into what a Viren's supposed to look like, and goes on a rampage and attacks Bell. And so now, in front of everyone, Bell is currently being attacked by Ween, while Dix is cheering on Bell, killing her, using his knife in hand to skewer her open, to kill a monster like he always does. Bell doesn't do that. Instead, he stands there, allows himself to get skewered through the shoulder, hugs Ween, and tells her it's going to be okay, that he is okay. At that moment, Ween actually starts to cry and says his name over and over again. So Bell was actually able to break through the insanity of when a Wyvern loses its jet. This really pisses Dix off because he did not see this coming. He did not see Bell being able to get through to her, and so he starts to just pound on Bell even harder, calling him a hypocrite, saying you can't save humans and monsters, you can't choose both. That's not how the world works. Do his duty and kill monsters. Dix is flustered enough where Bell is actually able to get the upper hand for a second. He breaks part of his spear and gets a good hit on him, but other than that, it didn't really work out. Dix knocks him back, and right before he's about to kill him, he's cut in the back by Leo. Dix just assumes that Leo's just going on a rampage because he's been cursed. But no, Leo then talks and says that Bell's words reached him and that the fog is being removed from his eyes at that moment, which also surprises the fuck out of Dix because that means Bell was not just able to get through Ween, he was able to get through Dix's curse. And so Leo and Bell start fighting Dix together. Leo's not at full strength because he's cursed and Bell's beating the hell out of, but the two of them are still overwhelming Dix at this point. Gran realizes Dix is now in trouble. He tries to go help, but because he's not paying attention, he gets half his face clawed off. Then Bell does something that he's never done before. He starts to charge Argonaut in his fist while fighting, so that means he's concurrent chanting. Dix is freaking out about this, but he can't do anything about it. He's being cut up by Leo while trying to get to Bell to stop him. Bell then swoops in and punches Dix right in the chest, flies through the air into a wall, and the curse is deactivated. Unfortunately, it was not deactivated because Dix was knocked unconscious. It was deactivated because Dix deactivated himself, so he can get back to a level 5 so he can survive being punched by Bell. Leo then charges in to finish off Dix, but Dix then Ween's jewel and threatens to crush it. So the fight is now paused for a second, but then Dix chucked the jewel as far as he can. Bell runs to catch it, Leo runs to catch Bell before he falls, and in that time, Dix just runs across the area to where Ween is and then curses her. Dix's second curse allows him to cause illusions to any one individual. This illusion is of Bell, and he has an illusion of Bell basically run all the way out of Knock into Daedalus Street. And of course, Ween follows the illusion of Bell. Dix then gets away because he has his eye to open and close doors, and Bell goes after Ween. Leo then leads all of the monsters that are able to still move to go save Ween with Bell. The rest of the Hestia Familia, because they weren't on the expedition, have no idea that any of this is happening and are trying to figure out a way they can help Bell and Ween. Lily then remembers that her former captain wanted to capture monsters and sell them, and so they decide to go to meet up with Soma. Soma's actually quite happy to see Lily again and greets her like an old family member. When she asks where Zotrik is, he tells her that he locked his fauna and threw him in prison. So all of them, plus Soma and Chadra, the new captain, all go and visit Zotrik, who's now just an ordinary man. Lily gets straight to the point and asks, "You were planning on selling monsters. Who are you going to sell them to?" And that is when Zotrik put two and two together and realized, "You discovered talking monsters, didn't you?" He then decides to insult and mock Lily for a while before he's basically ordered by Soma to open his mouth, where he then reveals, well, you might find some clues in Daedalus Street. And so the Hestia Familia end up in Daedalus Street around the same time Ween is going on a rampage. She actually attacks Haruhime because Haruhime tries to calm her down, but Bell, of course, gets in the middle and stops that. Bell's plan is to stick the jewel back into Ween's head, which will then calm her down, which makes perfect sense. But before he could do that, a spear goes through her shoulder and pins her to the ground. This spear came from Finn, the captain of the Loki Familia, and the entire executives of the Loki Familia, and quite a bit of their army are there. This is the most terrifying, horrific moment of Bell's life up to this point, because he is completely and utterly trapped. Because the strongest Familia is now going to get between him and Ween. And they are in front of an entire crowd of civilians. So if he tries to stop them and help Ween, this will be shown in front of the world. The world will know that Bell and the Hestia Familia tried to save a monster. And so Bell makes the decision that only a fool can make. He slowly walks in between Ween and the Loki Familia and raises his knife to them. He then declares that this wyvern belongs to him. Ween then breaks free of the spear and just goes on a rampage down Daedalus. Bell, of course, chases after her. The Loki Familia was intending on going after Ween as well, but that's when Leo and all the other Zenos appear and basically start to fight the Loki Familia. And they get washed. Like, every single executive just beats down every single major Zeno leader, and then the lower tiers of the Loki Familia basically beat down the rest of the Zenos. It's not even a fight, it's just a beating. And the entire time this is happening, Leo's like, oh, so this is why Faust told us never to engage with the Loki Familia. Faust then tries to use his secret weapon, which is a giant golem made of adamantite. And that doesn't go well at all. Tiana's sword is also made of adamantite, and so she just cuts that thing in half. And while it's still moving, she then cuts its head in half, and that finally takes it out. Faust then starts laughing his ass off, like, we're doomed! There's nothing we can do! The Loki Familia are monsters! That is when Astrarius takes the stage. A giant motherfucking black minotaur, and with a single roar, he knocks unconscious over half of the Loki Familia. He also knocks unconscious Haruhime and Lily. In fact, Welf and Mikito barely are standing after that. And so it becomes a hands-on-deck situation to take on Asterius, because he is powerful. Asterius has already proven that by the fact that he ran through the Ganesha Familia, Ryu, Asfi, and Aisha. He then decided to finish off Dix, killing him, before coming to the surface, where he is now taking on the Amazon twins and Bet. And he's winning. Like, it's not even close. They're throwing everything they have at him, but he's reflecting all of their weapons, and he's just taking any of their punches and kicks. But because they're all attacking at once, he can't really get a hit on any of them. So he decides to use a magic sword, which is in the shape of an axe, which releases a fucking giant bolt of lightning. So powerful that Bet's boots couldn't even absorb most of it. They still got fried. That's when Finn decided to send in Eyes, and she immediately cuts off Asterius' arm, and the two of them end up in a fight together. Faust is also discovered by Garth, but luckily, before Asterius is killed, or Faust is caught, Hermes decides to step in. He has his Familia release a bunch of smoke bombs, and so they're then able to get all of the Zenos out, and also get Faust out. He does leap behind Ikilos, the god of the Ikilos Familia, as the patsy. As for Bell and Ween, well, he continues to chase after Ween down the streets. Anytime an adventurer tries to attack her, he blasts a firebolt at them. The adventurers aren't dumb. They see that Bell is getting in the way, and so they lead Ween to a trap where a bunch of mages blast her with magic. And as one last act of being a bastard, Gran threw Dix's broken spear at Ween's chest, slightly stabbing her magic stone with it. The Zenos then appear and scare off the adventurers. Gross kills Ground. The ground underneath Bell and Ween collapses and they both fall to the lower area. And that's where Bell and Ween are finally able to have a moment. Belle's able to put the stone back in her head. She regains her sense of being. Ween's body starts to disintegrate because her magic stone is cracking. Belle is begging her to stay alive, but Ween understands she's dying, and she starts to thank Belle. As I said before, all the Zenos gain their sentience because of a dream they have. Something in their previous lives they see over and over again that leads them to wanting it for themselves. In Ween's dreams, she's always seeing the mortal races saving one another, risking their lives to protect someone they love from her, the monster that's attacking them. But when she's lying on the ground bleeding out, and she's calling out for help, no one ever comes for her. But this time, someone did come. Belle came. Belle is the hero that came for her. Ween's last words are, "I love you," before turning to ash. Belle then just breaks down crying, holding Ween's jewel. All the Zenos also begin to howl in pain and sorrow. And at that moment, pretty much all hope is lost. All Belle is basically just given up. But that is when Fel starts to chant. He starts to cast a spell that in the last 800 years has never worked. No matter how many times he tried, no matter how many times he used it, it always failed. It is a spell that does not exist, in a sense. It's a spell to resurrect the dead, to bring them back as they were before they ever died. A spell that it should be blasphemy against the gods themselves. But as he casts this spell, he used up all the magic he has left in his body, and for the first time in 800 years, it worked, and Ween is brought back. In a moment of both sadness and happiness, Bell hugs Ween. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, give a thumbs up so you enjoy more Danmachi and other main things. Thank you, and have a great day.